We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Citizens of the internet, welcome to episode 69 of the Polyticks show. Closing in on, well, not closing in, a little over halfway to 100 episodes. And I really started doing this seriously, let's say February of 2023. So, I don't do this. Joe Rogan has 2,000 something episodes or whatever. So I'm still kind of green, and I appreciate you tuning in if you are. There's a lot to talk about. Happy Labor Day. If you're off work, the working class has definitely suffered quite a bit over the last several years. And so a well-needed break is always nice. But I am back in the mix with the people we call affectionately shit libs or brunch liberals, the kind of people who watch the news and believe the things they say on the news. So we're going to go into a lot of that stuff today. And why don't we just get started right away? So the big news today was that Ukraine carried out one of its biggest ever drone attacks on Russia. And I know this because last night I was talking to someone who watches the news and was telling me, how Russia's weapons suck and everything they have is from World War II, and our drones and our weapons and all the things that we're giving Ukraine are really going to put the screws to Putin. And I don't believe that. I'm not saying that Putin's going to win, or I don't know what the outcome is actually going to be when this is all said and done. But what I do know is that none of this stuff that is running on these outlets, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, is worth taking serious, because between these stories, they're running ads for Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and all the contractors that make cash from extended, let's call them extended United States military excursions. So let's read into what CNN has to say here, and then we'll get into a little bit more of the details. So Ukraine launched one of its biggest ever drone attacks on Russia over the weekend, hitting a refinery and power station deep inside the country, according to videos posted on social media and geolocated by CNN. Geolocate, wow. CNN, look at you with that technology. The short videos show plumes of smoke rising from targets in Moscow and the neighboring Tver region. The Russian Defense Ministry acknowledged the size of the Ukrainian attack, but downplayed its effectiveness, saying Sunday that 158 Ukrainian unmanned aerial vehicles were destroyed and intercepted by on-duty air defense overnight in 15 regions, including over the capital. So, Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin, forgive me, Russian speakers, I know there's a lot of you in my audience, wink, wink, said 2 drones were shot down in the area of the Moscow oil refinery. No casualties were reported, but the second downed drone damaged a technical building of the refinery and caused a fire, which the mayor had said had been localized and did not affect the plant's operation. The Tver region's governor, Igor Rudenya, said on social media that a fire caused by the drone attack on the Konakovo district has been extinguished and that gas and electricity services to the area were operating normally. The Ukrainian drone strikes follow others in the past week, including one Thursday that set fire to oil reservoirs at a refinery in the Rostov region of Russia, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. Now, that line right there is, of course, the clincher, according to the Ukraine Defense Ministry. Now, what you have to keep in mind if you're paying attention and you're not a complete simp is that these guys want more money. So they have a vested interest in making it look as if they have, achieved some kind of a success to some degree. So, of course, me being the, you know, internet gumshoe that I am, I wanted to see what people were saying on Twitter because, Twitter typically has real news in comparison to, the mouthpiece or megaphone of the state that we refer to now as the corporate media or the legacy media, the stuff that's kind of that old people and people who really don't want to think about what's going on watch and just kind of, passively absorb. So here's what this account, Shay Bose, had to say about what's going on right now in the Ukraine-Russian war. And what he had to say was, as the Kursk misadventure fails, Russian forces have smashed through long-held Ukrainian deference in the east. Towns and villages fortified since 2014 are being taken on a daily basis. Kursk could, as predicted, for Zelensky. So here's the this is the map that the other side is kind of showing that's happening right now. So I don't know how legitimate this is. Again, this could be quote unquote Russian propaganda, but it's definitely interesting to hear both sides of the story. So let's go to the comments here, see what some of these people are saying. The situation in eastern Ukraine is complex. Russian forces' gains don't necessarily mean an end for Zelensky. Ukraine's military strategy and political leadership will be crucial in responding to these challenges. I don't know what that is. Zelensky pushed to punch above his weight by Washington never made any sense. The left and fake news, Ukraine are winning. See, now, as much as I hate to call them the left, I don't think that guy is. And here's what the Russia is only advancing into areas that have already been flattened by artillery. What's the point? Okay. This is an interesting comment because if the areas have already been flattened by artillery, they're moving into them because the areas were flattened by their artillery. I don't know what kind of cope that is. It's over. Time for the comedian to exit stage left. If Ukraine's invasion of Russia's Kursk Oblast was a diversion, it has failed. So that's from Forbes. I don't know how legitimate that is, but this guy doesn't look like the type to spend the time photoshopping that. So Kursk is turning into a complete and utter disaster. Soon the forces will be derouted, killed, captured, equipment destroyed, handed over. Many of them may be crack troops to the extent that Ukraine has such a thing, meaning UK, US trained. Meanwhile, Russia advances. So what I was talking to my esteemed cohort about last night, who was bragging about, all the drones that we have and that Ukraine's using to beat Russia, is eventually it's going to get to a point where Ukraine's going to run out of people. And then what? Do they engage U.S. forces at that point? NATO maybe. And there's already reports that there are people fighting, NATO forces and U.S. forces fighting there now. I don't know how legitimate those are, but I have to expect that they're a lot more legitimate than what we're seeing on CNN here, because these guys are just going to cape for war no matter what. So that's the update on the Ukraine, the U.S.'s current forever war. And I mean, I'm pretty sure we still have people in Afghanistan to some degree. I know we still have people in Iraq and Syria. And I just don't understand how people who have watched this dynamic unfold over the last 20 years still have faith that this is, fool me once, spy on me, fool me twice, can't get fooled again, as George W. Bush would say. Moving on, there was a little bit of a scuff between one of my favorite online groups, the Revolutionary Blackout Network, and the ADL.
ADL is played out. Nobody knows who the ADL are. Stop giving them attention. Nobody cares about the ADL.
So recently, as you may or may not know, there was a thing happening in the Middle East. Let's put it that way. There is a thing happening in the Middle East. And as a result of that, a lot of people are being called racists. And, you know, I think if anything, the silver lining to the problem in the Middle East is that it's exposing how things like racist and Putin puppet and all that kind of crap are used to kind of dismantle dissenters, especially with the Israel thing. You can see it if you even remotely say something that is mildly critical of Israel or the IDF, or you're instantly labeled as an anti-Semite and completely removed from the dialogue. Forget the reality that probably the largest and most organized protests against this military excursion are fomented by Jewish people, like Jewish Voice for Peace and Simone Zimmerman from If Not Now When. And I think, honestly, just to take a little sidebar here, I've seen a lot of people online, really going at like guys like Dave Smith and people who are Jewish that aren't necessarily pro-Israel. And, I saw Myron Gaines from Fresh and Fit kind of like, basically like, come on, Dave Smith, we know what the real problem is. Just say it, basically kind of trying to insinuate that it's, the Jews that are the problem. And this is ridiculous. Like I said, the biggest pushback is Jewish people against this. So, I mean, you completely lose you lose the minds of people who can think when you start acting like that. Nick Fuentes, Myron Gaines, all these people, even Jake Shields to some extent, trying to make it like a race thing when it's really an empire thing. But recently, one of the victims of these Euro racist attacks, which I love to see this, were Black men and women and from the Revolutionary Blackout Network. So I want to start by showing you this. This is absolutely great. So this is how this came to my attention, really. So here's Nick Cruz subtweeting the ADL, or quote tweeting the ADL, saying, "Shut the fuck up, nobody cares." And here's the original tweet. So this is the ADL. This is how Revolutionary Blackout Network, a popular socialist activist group led by Nick Cruz, responded to a headline that says 44% of Jewish college students don't feel safe identifying as Jewish on campus. Such a lack of empathy and outright hostility is plain anti-Semitism. Yes, Nick Cruz is a racist. So what I think is great about this, and I've said this several times, is suddenly all the people who were making fun of liberals in their safe spaces are requesting safe spaces. And I mean, forget the fact that this is completely, juvenile and infantile what they're doing. Like, oh no, it hurts my feelings that people are protesting Israel near my school, and you need to protect me from things I don't need to hear. So to keep going with this, let me go back to the original tweet and let me just show you how ridiculous these people actually get. So I said Kanye was right about the ADL.
ADL is played out. Nobody knows who the ADL are. Stop giving them attention. Nobody cares about the ADL.
And look what this guy says right here. Liam O'Mara the fourth, PhD, by the way. Clearly proof that they're handing these fucking things out in Cracker Jack boxes, as you will see. Kanye is a neo-Nazi. His opposition to ADL is not respectable or accurate. So I chimed in with the my favorite photo of all time, the COVID guy, as I like to affectionately call him. LOL, yeah, he's one of those black white supremacists. This guy agrees. I just love the smile on his face, the stupid, like, I'm complying smile. It's just great. So here's this guy's response. And forgive me for sharing my Twitter battle with you. I just, really felt like it was something that needed to be shared because it's just to illustrate how ridiculous these people really are. Are you really so dense you think a black person can't be a white supremacist? Now let's just kind of ruminate on that sentence right there. That is just a beautiful piece of comedy, beautiful piece of unintentional comedy here. Are you really so dense that you think a black person can't be a white supremacist? I guess I'm dense because no, I don't think a black person can be a white supremacist. Even if they run with neo-Nazis and stuff, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever because they're not white. It's like saying a white guy can be a Black Panther, Yeah, you could be sympathetic to the Black Panthers, as I am. You could be, an assistant to the Black Panthers, but like you're not going to be out there shouting Black Pride, if you're a white dude. And in the same way, just because black people have political opinions, there are black people, not all black people, but there are black people that have political opinions that align with people on the right, or, there's plenty of black people on the right. Doesn't mean you get to call them a white supremacist. And I think it's funny because it shows just how ridiculous, again, this has gotten. And it's I think we've reached a tipping point where you can't really take these. No one with any kind of a functional brain takes this seriously. So this whole kind of dynamic in the Middle East, I think, has exposed the way that this kind of stuff is used as a tool to defame and deplatform. And the ADL, of course, is the ringmaster of that circus. They're constantly trying to get people deplatformed for criticizing, their political overlords as racists. You're a racist. You need to be taken out of the debate. And I think it's really clear to most people at this point too that all of this stuff is manufactured. All this hate speech, we need to protect people from hate speech stuff, has been manufactured for that reason. You see it right here in action. And of course, you don't hear, AOC or the people who were calling for right-wing people to be deplatformed for racism or whatever, saying that about the pro-Palestine people because, that would be politically untenable for her because she's pandering to those people despite, not actually doing anything for them. So look at this. Anyway, holy shit, that's sad. It's also literally racist as it assumes the color of one's skin can dictate socio-political ideologies. So it's racist. Let's just kind of break this down real quick. It is racist. This guy's saying it's racist to think that a black person cannot be a white supremacist. I don't know if this guy's a robot or if he's just huffing glue or got some really, really killer shit. But that is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. So, my response is, you're hilarious. This is too funny. And I think there's a response there from him. He says, what I am is an academic expert in the discourse of race. Your cowardice isn't my problem. And I said, what you are is a complete moron who isn't afraid to show it or an unserious troll. There are no other options for someone who thinks black white supremacists exist in reality. So I just want to look at who this guy is. Oh, wow. I mean, I'm sure he's a nice enough guy. He's just obviously very stupid. snarky history professor and commentator, bibliophile, anti-nationalistic, libsock, Antifa mountain man, geeky cat dad. These are my own, not my employers. So I didn't know that people this ridiculous actually existed in reality, but it's good to know that, you know, there are actually people that, you know, it's like the Bukowski quote, right? Let me look this up real quick. I'm gonna share this Bukowski quote because I think it's just such a great quote and it's so fitting for this. And if you don't know who Bukowski is, he is a great writer. So let me just, who also happened to be a drunk, Charles Bukowski. So check this out. The problem with the world is that intelligent people are full of doubts and the stupid ones are full of confidence. Charles Bukowski. The problem with the world is that intelligent people are full of doubts and the stupid ones are full of confidence. And I think nothing better sums up this guy here than that quote. So Nick's response to this whole escapade was great too. And I just want to share that real quick before we move on. But Nick came back with this banger of a tweet where he said, RBN community to the ADL today. And I don't want to get in trouble for... Anyway, you get the idea. I don't want to play more than a couple seconds of that because think of how many marginalized groups could claim they feel unsafe anywhere in the U.S., not just on campus and with more actual evidence to back it up, unlike Zionists. The comments here are great. Anyway, people disingenuously weaponizing racism to squelch debate, honest debate, are the biggest scumbags in the world. And I think Kanye had it right.
ADL is played out. Nobody knows who the ADL are. Stop giving them attention. Nobody cares about the ADL.
So moving on. Another recent thing that popped up over the weekend is our good friend AOC is back in the public eye. And this is interesting because I still follow her on Facebook. So I happen to watch this story myself. Every once in a while I'll log into Facebook and I'll see a story update from AOC in my feed. And I happen to see this one and I happen to watch it and I happen to be very angry about it. But, not surprised because we know who this person is and we have known that for a long time. But let me just share this with you and let's listen to this and talk about it. So let's, here we go. Give you some volume here.
Y'all, this is a little spicy, but I have thoughts. I feel like I should save this for a live. I'm not coming for people who are thinking about this. I'll talk to you. What I have a problem with is the fact that if you are running for president, you are the de facto leader of your party. And first of all, trust me on this. I run as a third-party candidate in New York. I'm also run as a working families party candidate in addition to running as a Democrat. Because trust me, I've been on record about my criticisms of a two-party system. So this is not about that. But you are the leader of your party. And if you run for years and years and years and years and years in a row, and your party has not grown, and you don't add city council seats, and you don't add down ballot candidates, and you don't add state electeds, that's bad leadership. And that to me is what's upsetting. Because if you have been your party's nominee for 12 years in a row, 4 years ago and 4 years before that and 4 years before that, and you cannot grow your movement pretty much at all, and can't pursue any successful strategy, and all you do is show up once every 4 years to speak to people who are justifiably pissed off, but you're just showing up once every 4 years to do that, you're not serious. You're not to me, it does not read as authentic. It reads as predatory. I'm sorry. I'm just saying it. Because as a person, I endorse Working Families Party candidates. I endorse DSA candidates. I take risks, and I endorse even in primaries against Democrats when it's merited. What does this person do to grow power for the?
So, I mean, there's so much to unpack there. Starting with the person who's been the nominee consistently for years and years, that's Hillary Clinton. I mean, why did she keep coming back? Why does she get to come back and talk to people like she's not running this year, but her protege is, the person that, and her people are all up in the political system. So that she's not going to have that criticism for someone like Jill Stein. But I also just I always have to play this video every time we talk about AOC, because she is a mouthpiece for the Democratic Party now. She's like the stage managed person who talks to the left. And this was her, of course, when we first met her.
Start bringing the ruckus on the Democratic Party. That is our job. New York Post had this alleged information and was trying.
So this is the mashup I have about the Hunter Biden laptop. This is just to show you
it without any corroboration, without any backup information. They were trying to publish it to Twitter. Twitter did not let them, and now they were upset.
And we commissioned an independent forensic review to determine its authenticity. Senior investigative correspondent Catherine Harris joins us now with what we found. Catherine, I'm very interested. Good morning.
Sure you are.
Good morning, Tony. These House Republican investigations are coming, and that could be a challenge for the White House as we head into 2023 and 2024. The laptop data we had analyzed showed no evidence it was faked or tampered with.
So there you have
Digital
it.
forensic investigator.
Official mouthpiece of the Democratic Party, telling us that Jill Stein is a predator. Jill Stein, the predator. Given that Alien movie that just came out, that's very clever marketing. So I just want to close this segment off by showing you this tweet and basking in the glory of it. Brianna Joy Gray says, Jimmy Dore was right about her. And I think for that, Jimmy Dore was trending on Twitter yesterday because, once again, the skeptics were correct early on. And you need to listen to the skeptics if you don't already, because Jimmy Dore was right. Should get a bumper sticker made that says that. I'll have angry liberals attacking my car if I do that. But what else can you say about this? We all know this now. The discourse on Twitter is like, yeah, okay, AOCIA, fake ass, But let me go back to this. Sorry, let me put this back up for a second, and let's go into the comments for a little bit, because there's some interesting stuff here too. Brianna Joy Gray. So the first response to Brianna Joy Gray right here, he was right. He was right about Jill Stein? I don't know what he said here. This is a 52-second clip though, so let's play it. See.
Hey, breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. Jill Stein announces third-party bid for president. Ms. Stein will seek the Green Party nomination. A spokesman said her last two campaigns with the party were unsuccessful. This is sad. How bad do RFK Jr. and Cornel West have to be doing for Jill Stein to think she has a shot? Am I right? But America loves familiarity. We love seeing our favorite old faces from before over and over and over and over and effing over again. Nothing we want more than someone we rejected multiple times popping up again like a whack-a-mole. She doesn't mention COVID at all. She doesn't mention forced medical treatments. She doesn't mention lockdowns that crushed 41% of Black-owned businesses. She doesn't mention any. So that it's like they're just memory.
So these guys are still COVIDians, And they're mad that Jimmy Dore's saying this stuff at the end here. And well, forgive me, I'm just diving into this drama. But Bree's like, you've been such a disappointment. You can excuse yourself from my mentions and my esteem. What does that even mean? My esteem. Let's see how deep this goes. But Jimmy isn't a disappointment for shitting on Jill Stein a year before he ever criticized the Green Party. So maybe they're not doing the COVID thing. Revolutionary Blackout Network chimes in. Your obsession with Jimmy Dore is embarrassing. He voted for Jill Stein in 2016, unlike you. Is he going to be your deflection for everything? You can stay the National Enquirer of the left while bootlicking Kyle and ignoring the genocide. The rest of us are trying to build something. Jimmy Dore will turn on you like a dime like he did with Cornel West. He'd rather... So this is interesting because people like this don't see that Jimmy Dore just has principles. He's not a personality guy. And kind of going back to how I opened this, that is the biggest problem with politics today, is it's so much more about personality than policy. It's like the Kamala thing is the best example of that. People are like, well, it's a woman and it's a woman of color. I don't really care what her policies are, but she's better than Trump, who's an old white guy. I had a really interesting experience in a dating app recently where a woman of color matched with me on this dating app. And I think she saw that I was from Los Angeles, and she said something about West Coast liberals or being mad or something like that. And my response was, oh, I take it you're not voting for Kamala. And she goes, I'm voting for anyone black. And I said, okay, well, that's kind of interesting. You're going to vote for the queen of West Coast liberals who you were just making fun of because she's black. That makes total sense. I mean, I only vote for candidates because they're white, like imagine saying that. And it's different. Listen, I get it. If you're not white people have controlled the fucking dialogue for ages. We do need more people of color and women and, diversity in our politics. That's absolutely the truth. However, it's been turned into a marketing tactic to continue to sell you bullshit. And, what's going on right now is evidence of that. Who's running the country right now? Joe Biden is too senile to run for president, and Kamala Harris is on the campaign trail, saying the usual stupid shit she says, or reading a teleprompter. And they all read teleprompters, but seriously, that's what you're voting for if you vote for Kamala Harris. The people who currently control things, continuing to control things. And I don't know if you've looked around, but I that's not a choice I would make. But these people who watch the news, they believe the bullshit that they're sold. And so I'm gonna skip up to this next bit here. It's kind of the theme for the show today, and it's hypnosis tools of the empire. Now, I talked to someone who will remain unnamed about political situation recently, and they brought up Trump at Arlington Cemetery. Like, oh, did you see what he did at Arlington Cemetery? And I went, no, because I don't watch mainstream news. So I had no idea that this was such a big thing, but it is. And so after, he kind of briefed me on it and told me, why he hates Trump because of it. Trump's just a joke and he disrespected Arlington National Cemetery. And let me tell you this too. This is a left-wing person. Like they're not like a right-winger who loves the war and like is one of those like, well, protect the troops type guys typically. But this was one of the things that, he cited as a reason that Trump is just a joke. And listen, I'm not arguing that Trump isn't a joke. What I'm arguing for is the differentiation between personality and policy. But let me just show you this. So, after I was told this, I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to do some research on this Trump Arlington Cemetery thing. So I started going down the rabbit hole, and I started with a Google search. Okay. So let me just kind of walk you through this real quick, just to show you what I'm seeing here. You type in Trump Arlington, and here's the top stories. Top stories. Vice President Harris says Trump disrespected sacred. She attended National Cemetery at the center of Trump controversy. Desecrated by Donald Trump. Widow of fallen Marine calls out Trump's Arlington Cemetery. Sunday snapshot. GOP senator shifts Arlington blame game to the left. Just the framing of that right there. Trump campaign uses statements from Gold Star families to attack Harris. So that's the New York Times response. So this has become a thing. And it's not a thing because it's important. And it's not a thing because it really affects anyone. It's a thing because these fucks are talking about it all day, every day, and making it a thing. And that's why, the acquaintance I was telling you about believes it's such a big deal, because the news puppets told him it was. So here's the original story. Trump campaign staff had an altercation with official at Arlington Cemetery. Let's just look at this for a little bit. Two members of Donald Trump's campaign staff had a verbal and physical altercation Monday with an official at Arlington National Cemetery. Former president participated in a wreath-laying cemetery. NPR has learned. A source with knowledge of the incident said the cemetery official tried to prevent Trump staffers from filming and photographing in a section where the recent U.S. casualties are buried. The source said that Arlington officials had made it clear that the only cemetery staff members would be authorized to take photographs or film in the area known as Section 60. When the cemetery official tried to prevent the Trump campaign staff from entering Section 60, campaign staff verbally abused and pushed the official aside, according to the source. I would like to know who the source is, but, it's neither here nor there. But anyway, you get the idea now, right? This is the tone of the whole thing. So here's more controversy over Trump's National Cemetery. Here's Gabbard defending. Trump's Arlington Cemetery stunt was repulsive. What are the rules for filming? How was a Trump visit spark turmoil at America's most sacred cemetery? Excuse me. So what I think is interesting about this is that all of a sudden the Democrats are using the troops as props. And I mean, you could argue that Trump was doing a photo op, a prop, but these are the same people who have, continually put the troops at risk and are continuing to do that by escalating things with Russia, by escalating things in Israel, by, they're putting troops in harm's way. They're like, so who's worse? A guy who violated decorum? And that seems to be the case with most of the beef against Trump, is that he violated some decorum thing that we hold sacred. Oh, he took a picture at the cemetery with the families of people who were buried there. Whatever. Like it's not a good look. I'm not defending it. What I'm saying is the fact that this is part of the dialogue instead of, the difference between these two candidates on what they support is key. Because if you listen to Trump talk, and I've played the clips of him on Tim Pool saying we don't want more wars, he's the one candidate who's actually saying, hey, I would end the Ukraine thing. And I think that is why this type of stuff is made into an issue by the people who want that to keep going. So let me show you this clip of Tulsi Gabbard on CNN, and let's talk about it. A little bit more detail on this.
With regard to controversy after the former president visited Arlington National Cemetery this week. His campaign took photos and video of him in Section 60, where veterans of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan are buried, used it in a campaign video. The Army also says that Trump staffers abruptly pushed aside a cemetery official who tried to enforce Arlington's rules prohibiting political activities. I know you were with Trump at least earlier in that day at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Did you witness the altercation at Section 60?
So I will say this. Tulsi is the most qualified probably of any politician to speak about this, because she's actually a military, she actually served in the military, and I think still does to some degree. So she's seen people killed, and if anyone should be outraged by the constant circus drone of Trump at Arlington, Trump at Arlington, Trump at Arlington, Trump at, it should be her.
I was there from the beginning with the laying of the wreaths with the family members, the Gold Star family members, and some of the survivors of that terrorist attack in that disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. I was with them at Section 60, and what I saw was a very grave and somber remembrance and honoring of those lives that were lost. And I saw President Trump spending time at the invitation of these Gold Star families with them. He was there for a few hours. I did not see or hear about any kind of altercation until something came out in the news later on. The families were there.
So that's another interesting kind of side point. I didn't hear anything about this altercation until the news. And, you know, as of course, NPR said sources. Who are those sources? Are they partisan actors? Probably.
Grieving alongside President Trump. And it was a very special moment to really remember their names, remember their memories, and understand the true cost of war and the consequences of the decisions that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden made in the execution of that withdrawal.
Yeah, and it is very clear that the former president was invited in his personal capacity, as you said, by a family of one of the service members who was killed.
So there's Dana Bash pretending to be unbiased.
About 2 years ago, during the withdrawal from Afghanistan.
It was 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
3 years ago to the day on August 26th.
Yes, 3 years ago.
Tulsi corrects her on the facts. That's great right there. The politician, the service member correcting the news person, the journalist on the actual facts.
The question is about the federal law and Arlington's rules that prohibit partisan or political activities at national cemeteries. And
so what we decided to do was take a stupid little thing that happened and make it into a big partisan deal.
The military and also other members of other families who are buried right near there are upset about the campaign filming it and posting the video online.
So what I think this is kind of a snapback to the whole Tim Walz thing, because unlike Harris, Trump has a veteran as a VP. You know, whether you like J.D. Vance or not, he was a Marine. He did serve in the military, and neither Harris nor Tim Walz did, you know, at the degree that he did. You know, maybe Tim Walz was registered. I think from what I've seen, he's kind of been in trouble because he never actually saw live combat.
Do you believe that was appropriate?
And I don't know that J.D. Vance did either, to be honest. But I don't see him out there claiming, you know, that he did.
You know, I checked with the campaign on this question, and they have exchanges with the officials at Arlington Cemetery. They were approved to bring a camera there to document this historic and momentous day that should not be forgotten by any American. And to have a former president there and joining these gold stars.
Now, I've said this before. I think that Trump is politicizing the Afghanistan withdrawal thing when it's a withdrawal that he started and Biden finished. And, you know, I've said it before. How many people died while we were there? If a couple died while we were getting out, you know, it sucks. But hey, at least we're out. So no more can die. I mean, part of what you sign up for when you join the military is the risk of dying.
Our families, I know President Trump wanted to share that with others, especially given the fact that President Biden and Harris, I heard, were invited by some of these family members. They not only didn't come, they didn't even respond to that invitation. And now to have Kamala Harris put this statement out yesterday saying that she stands with these families, she stands with the military and with veterans. You only have to look at the response that came from the Gold Star families of these 13 service members of how offended they were by that statement, given she has not made any effort, not on that third anniversary or any other time, to call them directly to offer her condolences and even apologies that led to the loss of their loved ones.
Do you think that the campaign will release that communication that you're talking about? Because the Army is saying very clearly that they broke the rules because it was clearly put out online pictures, video.
See, this is what they're upset about. They broke the rules. Oh, the rules are so important. The rules are so important. Like, you know how important the rules were when we chose our nominee this cycle? Those rules are so important. Rules and decorum, the most important thing in American politics. So anyway, the reason I called this piece the hypnosis tools of the empire is because this is the way they hypnotize people. Trump did something at Arlington. He is a disrespectful to the troops, and it's repeated. And we saw it in the news cycle. That's what they do. That's what they do. They forge what the dialogue is. They're the controllers of the water cooler conversation. And so that's what people are going to be talking about at the water cooler. Whatever they push like this Arlington National Cemetery thing. You know, I'm not saying it's not a bad look for Trump. And I think Trump probably should have just came out and said, look, some people on my staff did some stupid stuff. I'm sorry that they did that. You know, they're being dealt with. But let's move on. It's really not that big of a deal. If he had done that, I think most rational people would have just respected him and, moved on with their lives. But that's not what happened, unfortunately. So Trump doesn't, and that's the thing about Trump. He doesn't have that capacity to be, humble. He doesn't have any humility whatsoever. I mean, you can see that in the way he talks. But again, my take on this election, just to solidify it one more time before we go forward, is it's the lesser of two evils thing. And right now, the Republicans are the lesser of two evils, unfortunately. The abortion thing, for example, is a joke. Like the idea that, the Roe v. Wade was already overturned. The Democrats aren't going to do anything about that. And Trump has said, hey, I don't support a national ban on abortion. He's out there plugging for IVF. So that kind of stuff, those kind of like culture war issues, the new Republican Party had Amber Rose at their convention, the woman who did the slut walk. It's the dynamics have changed, and I don't think people who watch the news understand that, because Lincoln was a Republican, the guy who freed the slaves, and the parties shifted after that, definitely. And the Democrats were originally, the racists and the pro-slavery party, but that changed. Especially it kind of solidified in the 80s with Reagan, when you had Lee Atwater talking about the Southern strategy, and you had Barry Goldwater even before that. That's when all the kind of racist cats moved over to the Republican Party. Well, guess what? Under Obama, all those same people, and I'm not saying all the racist cats are moving to the Democrat side, but what they're doing is the war party, who knows that that's an unsustainable tactic now, they're looking at demographics info, went, okay, well, we're not going to be able to control the Republican Party into doing wars because they're not going to win anymore, because they're, full of these racists and, Confederate types. And those people are still there. Don't get me wrong. I think they're a dwindling minority, but just like the Antifa far left people, the trans rights, all the crazy people on the left, it's a dwindling minority. Most people are kind of sensible about these issues. So I just think that when you watch the mainstream news, people don't see the reality that the parties have completely shifted. And we're going to go into the weeds on that in just a minute. But let's move on right now to another piece. Dave Smith, as you know, one of my favorite commentators these days, he was recently on Andrew Schultz's show. And I'm just going to start by showing he very eloquently breaks down the power play that removed Joe Biden from the presidential nomination, from the race, basically. And I think I'm just going to play this because he does an excellent job of laying this out for these guys.
Last few weeks.
Okay.
Biden steps down. Well,
kind of.
Oh, do we have a little
that was a straight up coup. They just totally stole this, and
we're being a little hyperbolic here, I imagine.
I don't know. I don't know how hyperbolic we're being.
Straight up coup.
No, well, look, let's just
So listen to it does sound a little intense, but the way that he breaks this down is
Look
masterful.
at it, like the facts as
I
we
love
have
that
it.
he's
Okay.
about to win this.
Well, I'm just again. Tell me where I'm wrong.
I
Okay?
read a little something on this,
So
yeah.
Joe Biden has been obviously in severe cognitive decline for many years
Yeah.
now. The entire media is like in Emperor's New Clothes mode.
Yep. Yeah.
You're not allowed. The week before the debate, the new propaganda term that was rolled out was cheap fakes. I don't know if you guys remember. It was the shortest lived propaganda campaign ever. It only lasted a few days.
Fake?
They were called, cheap. You know, it sounds like deep
Do you remember that? I remember it.
fakes. But you see, there's all these cheap fake videos online. Now, cheap fakes are different than deep fakes in that they're real, but they're out of context. So people are putting out these videos that make it seem like Joe Biden's in severe cognitive decline. But this is all all right-wing disinformation.
Got it.
But so this is what every corporate news outlet was saying the week leading up to the debate. Then the debate happens. It goes so catastrophically bad that they have to do this crazy 180-degree turn.
At least he told the truth.
Yeah, right. It's like they're struggling with how do we grapple with which was like, I mean, the debate performance itself was like, it's like, yeah, how did you guys let it get to this point?
Yeah.
You pretended that it wasn't a problem until literally it's not even just like a grandpa out of a nursing home. It was like the guy who's really not doing good within that nursing home.
Yeah.
Like your average nursing home, in take patient is doing better than this guy.
Yeah.
There will never be a worse debate ever.
By far. In the history of televised presidential debates, it was by far the worst appearance. Nothing even comes close.
It's funny because it's true.
Right after the debate, the entire media has to turn on him, and they're like, someone else has to come get him. He said he's going to go. He goes to Camp David.
So just to take a quick sidebar here, when you reminisce about this, what just happened right in front of our faces, how do you trust these people that are like Arlington Cemetery? They're clearly full of shit. But let's keep going.
And he has a meeting with all his inner circle. It's like Jill Biden and Hunter Biden and his closest advisors, and they all go there.
Hunter's advice is probably the best.
Yeah, the Hunters. You can do it. So this thing's gonna turn around, bro. So by tomorrow we're gonna be up by 20 points. I got a 10-point plan. We follow these 10 points. But anyway, so they go there. So he decides. He comes out. He goes, "No, I'm running. You know, I beat this guy in 2020. I'll beat him again this year. That's my legacy. I'm going to beat Donald Trump twice. I'm running." It's just not working. They send him out on a series of like interviews and things like he blows every single one of them, every last one. And it was just terrible because now it was like, the story, The Emperor's New Clothes or whatever. This was after. Now someone's already yelled out, he's naked. And so now there's a microscope on it.
Yeah.
So every little thing.
So that's a great point. After the debate, everyone was like watching Biden closely, like they weren't before, because the news told them he was fine.
Things that were happening for years, but when he came out there and he's like, "Hey, my vice president Donald Trump has been all over the country," and you're like, "Your vice president Donald Trump?" Like,
or when he introduces Putin, Zelensky's like,
he called.
I totally forgot about that. Do you remember that when Biden introduced Zelensky as Putin? Holy crap! That's how out of it this guy was, and look how fast all that stuff was wiped from the news cycle. Like most people don't even remember that. They're already like on the Kamala train and Trump at Arlington Cemetery.
Zelensky, Putin. Oh, Jesus. So it was really bad. But he's still like, "No, I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving." Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer have a meeting with him where they're strong-arming him. They're like, "We're withholding $90 million from your campaign because you have to step down and step aside." He says, "No, I'm not leaving." Okay? Then, according to Cy Hirsch, who's a real legit reporter on this, and I think he's right about this.
Cy Hirsch is not allowed in American media. He's not allowed on TV. So just a real quick aside on that. If you don't know about this, most of you probably do, but just to take a real quick sidebar into this. This is from Rich McHugh about that Seymour Hirsch article where he kind of lays this out. Cy Hirsch: on Sunday, the official told me with approval of Pelosi and Schumer, Obama called Biden after breakfast and said, here's the deal. We have Kamala's approval to invoke the 25th Amendment. So that's why Biden resigned right there, because they forced him out. Because if you remember, he put out a letter right before this saying that he was in for, like, that's it. Just like Dave said, but let me go back to Dave and let him finish, because he ties this up real nice.
Barack Obama comes in, goes, listen, we got Kamala Harris on board, I got the entire donor class, and I got the congressional leaders on board. You are out. We are invoking the 25th Amendment and removing you from office if you don't voluntarily drop out of the race. And Joe Biden says no.
Oh, wow.
The day that letter came out was a Sunday. That Sunday, on the Sunday news shows, you can go watch Face the Nation and Meet the Press. From the Sunday the letter comes out. Biden's surrogates are on the news going, why are we still talking about this? He's made his decision. He won the primary. This is the democratic process. He wants to run for, and he's running. It's Trump versus Biden. Get used to it. Those are your two options. Who do you want to be president? Mere hours later, the sitting president of the United States of America, a few weeks out from convention, announces that he's not, after telling you, yes, I'm doing it, announces he's not. And he doesn't do this with an address to the nation.
Yeah.
He does it with a letter on personal stationery with a signature that does not seem to match other Joe Biden signatures. That's like, whatever. Forget even.
It'd be real easy to forge his signature. I don't know that that's a thing, but the reality here is the reality that he was literally forced out. The president of the United States was forced out of his seat by donor money and, people that knew he was going to lose. I mean, I think that politically it's obviously a smart move because, they have a much better chance of beating Trump now with Harris, where if it had been just Biden Trump, it would have been overwhelmingly Trump. But now you're going to get, like people like the girl I mentioned earlier who are just going to vote for Kamala Harris based on personality alone, which is fine. If I understand that, if you're not a white guy, it's cool to see people that are not white guys in politics. So I understand it to some degree. I don't think it's very smart. And, but I come from a place where I can say that because there's tons of white guys in politics. I think if I wasn't a white guy, I would probably see it the way that these people did. But let Dave finish here.
The signature
way less squiggly.
But it's like that is such a weird way to do it.
Yeah,
and then it's on Twitter. That is so bizarre. And then we don't hear from Joe Biden for another 3 or 4 days. Yeah. And so all I'm saying is if you look at all the information, it seems like what happened is that their next move was to just put that out. And literally before Joe Biden is seen from again, the funds are already being transferred over to Kamala Harris. The move, I think it was presented to him as a fait accompli, as the French say, that it's like, this is done. You've already been removed. What are you going to do now? You're going to go back out there? And look, they could just say, if he went back out there and went, I never wrote that letter, they'll be like, well, we'll say you did.
Yeah.
And you forgot. Because who's going to really believe you anymore at this point? And so it's like, and I'm sure, my guess is they had all types of other, his son's in has legit legal problems.
So they're holding other things.
I'm sure there's all types of other things that they had on him where it's like, hey, how do you want to play this here? Do you want your son to go to prison for the rest of his life and your legacy is totally destroyed? Or do you want to be, and as soon as he stepped down, the corporate media went right back to the greatest president ever, a selfless decision that he made for the good of his country. He would step down, and now we're into this new propaganda campaign, which is that Kamala Harris is a cultural phenomenon.
Okay,
we're all supposed to believe that.
That sounds like a.
So, Puppet 1 replaced by Puppet 2. I mean, it's really that simple. Does voting matter? I would venture that it probably doesn't. So this is this next clip is Dave talking about the current decision, and that's going to segue us into our next piece. But let me just let you watch this bit of gold here.
I know we have limited
Are
time.
you voting in November? Do you vote?
That's a great question. I meant to ask.
Yeah, we didn't even talk Trump Harris. Okay.
You don't have to say who, but I'm just curious.
No, I mean, I would tell you if I was going to. I mean, like, I don't know. I just probably not. I don't really believe in voting for president. I'm not a big. Well, I mean, I think if you're, let's just say it takes you an hour or two of your day to go vote. If you're taking an hour or two of your day to do anything that you have a 1 in 140 millionth of a say in, if it was anything, I would look at you and be like, isn't there something better you could do with your time? Like, that's crazy. Like, that's just literally, we would not do that in anything else in our lives. It's kind of, I think, this ritual of the
feels like a
the government
responsibility.
Well, I would say
I also just don't like if I were to vote, it would be some type of protest vote. Like, I wouldn't, you know what I mean? And it doesn't matter. I mean, I live in New Jersey. It's gonna go for Harris.
That's my issue.
There's no real I also just, I really feel like the Democrats deserve to lose this election for several reasons. I think I mean, look, the biggest things that I say of the Biden-Harris administration were like the first big project was we're going to get this vaccine in as many people as possible, no matter what we have to do to get it in them, force, whatever we have to do. And the whole thing was sold off of lies. The thing didn't work the way they said it would work, and most people didn't need it. Then it was we're all in on funding the war in Ukraine, which I think is like the most reckless policy in modern American history. And then they just totally weaponize the justice system against their political opponent. And like, if that doesn't mean you deserve to lose, then I don't know what would. And then I see Trump.
And that right there sums it up. It's like, what is that guy doing? Holy crap. He has the world at his fingertips, and he's out here saying ridiculous things. So before we move on to how ridiculous the things Trump is saying are, I want to just share this bit of wisdom with you from Frank Zappa, who says, reality is invented for you by people who design it like a choreography. There's definitely an office somewhere in Washington with people you've never heard of that designs reality. It's not just about what will be the next event to come up, but rather what will be the interpretation of a given international event. And this must be distributed everywhere through the media without anyone asking questions about it. And as you can see, that is the tactic that was used to sell us Kamala Harris. That's the tactic that's being used to get us talking about the Arlington Cemetery thing, as if that's such a big, outrageous thing to be upset about. It's the reason, like Dave said, all the, the litany of stuff that he listed, the kind of actually really well thought out breakdown of the last 4 years. And there you have it. So Trump is terrible. And I want to start by showing you this video of just how terrible he is, because I tried to watch a thing he did with Tulsi Gabbard, and it's just embarrassing, to be honest, So here's a clip from it to get things started. Just listen to this.
The strangest thing today, I looked at the news conference of Kamala. I call her Comrade Kamala.
Surely you can't be serious.
Kamala.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
She's you know that. She's a Marxist. Her father was a Marxist before her. So she was brought up in the family tradition. And she really is, and this country is not ready for a Marxist. We don't want a Marxist as a president. And she destroyed San Francisco. She destroyed California. And we're not going to let it destroy our country. I'll tell you, it's not going to happen. So.
Yay!
But just To finish, so for some reason she doesn't want to talk to anybody. So she's either not the smartest light in the ceiling. I'm trying to be nice here. I want to be. They say be nice, sir.
She's not the smartest light in the ceiling, and she's a Marxist. So let me ask you this, Donald. Was she a Marxist when this happened? When you donated money to her campaign? Campaign finance records show Donald Trump donated twice to re-elect Kamala Harris as Attorney General of California more than a decade ago. So was she a Marxist then? Has she always been a Marxist, dude? Is when you donated money to her twice to re-elect her, was she a Marxist? Who knows? Let's let Trump finish here.
You know, it's hard to be nice when somebody is destroying your country and wants to destroy your country. It's hard.
You have to donate money to people when they're destroying your country. The biggest threat to the history of our country.
Like that, but
sorry, my Trump is terrible sometimes. Sometimes I do all right, but that was not one of those times.
She is. She was a terrible vice president. She was a terrible border czar, worst in history, probably not just. Millions and millions of people, I say 20 million plus, have poured through the border during their term. I had the safest border in the history of our country. They have the most unsafe border in the history of the world.
In the history of the world.
They're coming through, and many of them are from prisons and jails. There's a slight difference, as you know. Prisons.
He's playing the
jails.
hits from. So why is he doing this? Because I'm going to show you right here, and just to kind of, he's back on Twitter. Here he is on Twitter saying the same stupid shit. Meet your neighbors if Kamala wins. What is that? So that's who Kamala supports, really, Donald? You really expect us to believe that? So follow that with this story that came out on August 26th, so about a week ago. More than 200 Bush, McCain, Romney alums endorse Harris for president, criticize Trump. Are they all Marxists? Are these people all Marxists? So let's read this. Washington, more than 200 Republicans who previously worked for either former President George W. Bush, the late Senator John McCain, or Senator Mitt Romney, endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris for president in an open letter Monday obtained exclusively by USA Today. The letter from alums of 3 Republican presidential nominees prior to former President Donald Trump comes on the heels of a Democratic National Convention last week in Chicago that showcased Republican detractors of the GOP nominee. At least 5 former aides to President George H.W. Bush also signed the letter, which has 238 signatures in all. A similar group of about 150 anti-Trump former staffers of Bush, McCain, and Romney pledged support for President Joe Biden in the 2020 election. Now, no matter how bad Trump is, to me, right there, that is why he's the lesser of the two evils. The Uniparty supports Harris. And if you want things continuing down the current path, that's who you should vote for. If you want even an inkling of chance of change, you should hope for a Trump victory. I don't know that it's going to happen. I don't know if they're going to allow it to happen, but let's keep going. We reunite today, joined by new George H.W. Bush alumni to reinforce our 2020 statements and for the first time jointly declare that we're voting for Vice President Kamala Harris and Governor Tim Walz this November. The letter reads, of course, we have plenty of honest ideological disagreements with Vice President Harris and Governor Walz. That's to be expected. The alternative, however, is simply untenable. Among those who signed the letter in support of Harris and her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, include former McCain Chiefs of Staff Mark Salter and Chris Koch, Joe Donahue, former legislative director for McCain, Jennifer Lux, press secretary for McCain's 2008 campaign, a press secretary, and Gene Becker, longtime chief of staff for George H.W. Bush. Also backing Harris are David Nierenberg, Romney's 2012 campaign finance chair. Now that's a big name. David Garman, undersecretary of energy for George W. Bush. There's a neocon. And Olivia Trove, a former advisor to both George W. Bush and Vice President Mike Pence. great people who liberals should love. Troy spoke from the stage of the DNC convention last week. Yes, Kamala Harris is a Marxist. That's why all the stock and trade Democrats and Republicans support her. Trump, you sound like a moron. What are you doing, my guy? You need to hire some new people. You need to fire the people that are telling you that this is the angle you should, the tack you should be taking. And I'm just going to shore this up with one last little piece of tape for you from one of my favorite accounts, which I affectionately call RAT. Republicans Against Trump. And they've got your favorite person here, Liz Cheney, telling you how it is. Liz Cheney. Let's let her talk. We don't even have to read the caption.
I say this to my Republican colleagues who are defending the indefensible. There will come a day when Donald Trump is gone, but your dishonor will remain. I say this.
So there you go. A vote for Kamala Harris is a vote for Liz Cheney, a vote for McCain and Romney and George W. Bush staffers, a vote for the continuation of failed policy unendingly. And that is why, like I said earlier, a lot of these neocons have switched sides because they know that the, kind of Republican Party is not friendly to their interests anymore. And the part of it that has completely moved to the other side and are speaking at the DNC now. So that's why Trump is a complete moron. So this last piece is a little bit of a departure from what we've been talking about, but it's something that a couple of the shows I watch have kind of touched on, and I just wanted to add my own spin or my own viewpoint. It's not even really spin, I shouldn't say, my own viewpoint on this story, because it's a good one. So as you know, California is, of course, the liberal hellhole, most hated place in the world by anyone who, loves freedom. I'm being sarcastic, of course. It's a political construct that's used as a whipping boy by people who know nothing. And I'm going to show you this right now. So we had this story come out, and this is from the New York Post, about Shake Shack closing a bunch of locations in California. Shake Shack to shut 6 California locations, including 5 in LA, after the state's $20 minimum wage hike. So just that headline alone is telling, because it has a slant to it, right? It's like, oh, these stores were closed after the $20 minimum wage hike. Well, yeah, technically they were closed after the $20 minimum wage hike, but that's meaningless. And as we'll see. So let's just go into the comments a little bit. Fake news. They struggled due to overexpanding into high rent areas, renting too much footage, and poor food service quality. A lot of one and done customers. That's a very smart and accurate response. Let's keep going. Darn Gavin Newsom making Shake Shack close underperforming stores in Ohio and Texas. Shake Shack closing 9 underperforming locations. So it's not just California where they raise the minimum wage. Somehow, In-N-Out is 50% cheaper with more locations in California and was already paying their workers $20 an hour, and yet they aren't shutting any stores down. Crazy how that works. It is, isn't it? Now, here's a dumb comment. I don't get it. We keep telling Democrats this will happen, and they tell us we're wrong, and then it happens. And then the pattern happens again and again and again and again. It's not because of Democrats, dummy. It's because of your corporate overlords in both parties. And as I just showed you, the Democrats are not the left. If you think they are, you're not very smart. So I want to show you my little piece of information I want to add to this debate here, because this is the first thing I thought of when I saw this headline. And it is that prices of fast food were already bad. And no one's really talking about this, but there's an article about it that I'm going to share with you right now. McDonald's sales are slumping because people can't afford fast food. So dummies, This has nothing to do with the $20 minimum wage and everything to do with the state of the economy. So if you really want to get after Democrats, don't focus on California. Just focus on how bad they've been doing with the economy overall, the inflation, the forever wars, the billions of dollars being sent to Israel and Ukraine while our bridges and our economy is crumbling, and people are dying in the streets of fentanyl overdoses and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of different ways to approach that, but that is the reality. And I'm not blaming the Democrats or the Republicans for it, because they're both complicit. They're both guilty. But let's read this article real quick before we close this out. So, McDonald's sales are slumping. Let's dive into it here. McDonald's global sales slumped in the second quarter, marking the first decline for the fast food giant since 2020 as inflation-weary customers pull back on eating out. That right there is the reason that Shake Shacks are closing. Nothing to do with the $20 minimum wage, you cucks. In the U.S., McDonald's same-store sales between April and June fell almost 1%, a dip management attributes to slowing foot traffic as low-income consumers, in particular, pare spending on food outside of the home. Grocery store prices, while also elevated even as inflation cools, have risen slower than restaurants. Of course, they have to pay people to prepare the food. This shortfall was driven by sluggish traffic, with consumers shifting a larger share of meal occasions toward grocery stores, Morningstar equity analyst Sean Dunlop said in a research note. McDonald's CEO Chris Kempczynski said in an investor call Monday that food, labor, and paper costs, which have risen by as much as 40% in some markets over the past few years, have forced it to raise menu prices. So, food, labor, and paper costs. Food, labor, so there's some truth to the cost of labor going up. But with inflation, it should go up. You have to be able to live. So let's finish this. McDonald's is also playing defense as it struggles to match other fast food chains' new value offerings in response to shoppers' inflation fatigue. So that's another side of this that people aren't talking about. If you have a choice and you're going to spend that kind of money to go eat some shitty fast food, are you going to go to Chick-fil-A or In-N-Out, or are you going to go to McDonald's or Burger King or Shake Shack? So as it struggles to match other fast foods chains' new value offerings in response to shoppers' inflation fatigue, according to one analyst, in late June, the company launched a $5 meal promotion at U.S. restaurants after Burger King and Wendy's announced similar deals aimed at budget-conscious consumers. Despite the move to cut costs, McDonald's was sluggish in rolling out the offering and left playing catch-up with the other chains, according to A.B. Bernstein restaurant analyst Danilo Gargiulo. McDonald's hasn't been able to communicate value as well as other restaurants from a pure coordination standpoint with franchisees. Everyone went their own way, and there was no national program, so they played defense in launching the $5 meal deal, he told CBS Money Watch. Kempczynski acknowledged that some consumers no longer see McDonald's as the best deal, conceding in the earnings call that our value leadership gap has recently shrunk. So there you have it. Demonizing workers who make $20 an hour is not going to help your cause if you are also working for a living. You should bond with these workers and figure out how to get your own wage increase, because that's a win for workers, and you're shitting all over it like a dummy because you have some unfounded hatred towards California because you've been propagandized to have it. And it's ridiculous how stupid people can be. These same people that are like, oh, California Shake Shack's closing because of the $20 minimum wage, I believe it because I heard it on CNN, are the same people that will turn around and go, CNN is fake news. Yeah. It's the problem with the news isn't that it's necessarily fake, because they do have to maintain some kind of an air of legitimacy. The problem is they selectively choose what to report on. The Arlington Cemetery thing being a great example. Every news outlet's running pieces about, oh, Trump did this thing at the cemetery. That's, it's so terrible. Oh, the decorum, and he broke the rules. Oh, and I'm sure that the people who are laying in that cemetery really care that he took a photo with some of their families in it. The rest of the public is outraged. But anyway, it's all it's all designed, like Frank Zappa said, to make you think a certain way. And as we move closer to this election, just be aware of the empire's hypnosis tactics and keep a strong mind about you. Look for other information sources. But at the end of the day, this is kind of a hopeless end cap to our show today. But it's also funny because it's true. And just remember, when you're fighting with your family about Trump or Kamala, or you're fighting with your friends about Trump or Kamala, I just want you to remember that it doesn't really matter that much. Now, I will say, again, if gun to my head today, I would still vote for Trump because I think at least there's a small chance things might change a little bit. We know for a fact that nothing's going to change if Kamala Harris is reelected, other than the news going, yay, our president's a black lady, yay. That's the only thing that's really going to change. So I'm going to close this out with the brilliant Key and Peele's take on electoral politics. Thank you for tuning in, y'all, if you did, and I will see you next time.